Hello everyone and welcome to my review of Honda's 2021 Civic Type R. This is now a vehicle that is effectively out of production. We've got the 11th gen Civic already in the dealerships and we expect the next generation of this Type R to show up in a year or so's time. But I've never tried out the Type R and I desperately wanted to because on the outside it's a wild looking thing. And getting as much praise as it has, I just needed to experience it from behind the wheel. Because as it's largely been defined to me as the best front wheel driving experience, I wanted to find out if that really stood up to the claims. So we're gonna go kind of brief in this review because I'm hardly the first person to cover the Civic Type R. I'm hardly going to say anything new here, I suspect. So let's talk about the powertrain. We've got a transverse mounted 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. It's turbocharged and has VTEC mated to a 6-speed manual transmission and of course front wheel drive only. The powertrain is something that's obviously not shared with any other Civic, and where you may find your domestically built Civics in your dealership, depending on where in the world you are, this Civic Type R comes from the UK plant for Honda's Civics. This engine produces 306 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. You can tell we're in a 2021 model of the Civic Type R for the exterior color. This gray has only been available for the 2021 iteration. And it's interesting that for such a wildly designed vehicle with all of its venting, whether it's fake or real, or extensions of the body and that huge wing in the back that every time you look in your wing mirrors, that's actually kind of funny, you look in your mirror to look at your wing, it towers above that belt line and it feels like such a dominant part of your view behind, but it doesn't impede your rear visibility at all, really. The color gray is almost a dichotomy for just how wild of a design this vehicle is. I kind of think that if you've got something that looks this crazy, it should have as visually loud of a color. For the Type R, it has 20-inch rims and Continental Sport Contact 6 tires. This tire and wheel combination obviously provides a lot of grip for this powertrain, and only when you're acting really stupid or maybe some loose surfaces on a launch can you feel the front end losing a touch of grip or a little bit of torque steer coming through. But like I said, you largely have to be driving like an idiot to get the power to the ground in an ineffective way. Let's talk about the transmission because this might be my favorite part of the Civic. We've got a beautifully weighted clutch with a little bit of revving when you're at first gear, trying to find that first bite point, making this vehicle nearly impossible to stall, which is a great thing for anybody. And with this milled shift knob, it just feels so wonderful in the hands, and going from gear to gear is so perfectly notchy, it's almost like it couldn't be going anywhere else when you want to shift up or down. Now I have to say the most disappointing element of the Type R's driving experience, I would have to say, is the exhaust and engine noise, because it's kind of just noise. It's just bellowing volume of air rushing through the system. And I'm in sport mode now. There's just nothing really nice to listen to. It's fun to play with the turbo and get all those blow-off noises. That's one of my favorite parts of driving, but yes, the exhaust noise and all of that is, I think, a bit disappointing. Switching into Type R mode, it heavily enhances the synthesized noise, which, again, I'm not particularly fond of in a car, and I haven't found any way to turn it off. But the way the Civic Type R takes a corner and where all the feedback is delivered through the steering wheel and through the brake and throttle pedal is just stunning. So going a bit enthusiastically into a corner here, tons of grip. and always so rewarding to push it after you get out of that corner. The steering is so rich, and whenever you start up the Civic Type R, it defaults in the middle setting, the sport setting, between Plus R mode and Comfort mode. And because the Type R has adaptive suspension, you can really tell the difference in the ride quality between Comfort, Sport, and Plus R mode. I think really when you're in Comfort mode, this thing is just as livable in terms of ride quality as a normal Civic. It doesn't feel compromised at all in day-to-day situations. And even when you push it into Plus R, it isn't so rigid that it just becomes so undesirable to push on a nice bit of road when you eventually find one, because the balance of this system and how each little element is so well connected to the next makes the Type R so repeatably enjoyable to drive that every time you get in it, it feels special. And that is going into the fact that the interior of this Type R is substantially different to any normal Civic. We have potentially some of the absolute best seats I've ever sat in a car. These suede and cloth, manually adjustable racing seats, deep bolsters on the side and around my body. They're one piece, but being 6'4", I actually have a good enough of head support so that if I do need to rest my head back, I don't need to crane my neck. But it isn't just the seats. You've got the micro suede on the steering wheel. You've got the carbon fiber-esque elements across the dash and in the door cards, more micro suede there too. You're obviously in a Civic. It's just as practical and just as accommodating for pretty much any individual, but you really do feel like you're in something unique in the Type R. And talking further about the element of practicality, it's no surprise after living with this Type R for even just a few days why the affordable sports car is a near extinct species. We have so many thrills behind the wheel, and yes, we don't have those rear-wheel drive dynamics that so many car enthusiasts think is the only way to go. This front-wheel drive experience is so fun and so full of joy that you wonder why you would ever want something smaller, potentially more expensive, and something that's not going to be as accommodating for everyday usability. You need to go for an IKEA run? The Type R is just like any other Civic hatchback, and there's all this space up front in the door cards, underneath the wireless phone charger. There's an open spot for your phone or sunglasses, and then the whole sliding arrangement with the various levels in the center console is a genius bit of work. Downsides to the Civic, well, it's kind of a boomy space on the highway. It's certainly a little noisier than your standard Civic. And it might be an issue with my particular car, but it does seem like there's some kind of speaker grill vibration or something not put together quite right in that door card over there, because every time that I'm at a higher RPM, there's a little bit of rattling coming from that side of the car. There's not as many creature comforts that some might hope for a vehicle of this price point, like there's no heated seats or heated steering wheel, not as much safety kit, but small details, honestly. Small details. The Civic Type R truly is special, and I hope that whatever comes next for the Civic and the Civic Type R, that it only improves on the character of this 10th generation vehicle. So for anyone that owns a Civic Type R, I think they know just how wonderful of a vehicle it is, and that's exactly why dealerships are putting some serious markups on vehicles like this, and owners that have 2 or 3 year old versions of the Civic Type R are selling it for essentially the same money that they bought it new. So to anyone that is looking at a Civic Type R, I'm hardly going to be the last person to convince you to go and just try one out, because the praises that I had read and watched about the Civic Type R, thinking that I would never have the chance to drive one in this generation, are true. They are warranted, and this is easily the best front-wheel drive driving experience that I've ever encountered. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.